another and needed to make sure we got a couple of logistics out of the way from one to the next. I'd like to call the meeting to order at 7:04 and ask us to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We're going to start out with Golden Apple Awards. Dr. Bernia.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Good evening, everyone. Bobby Kidd, are you in the room? Wow, okay. I don't think this has ever happened to us before.
It has, but just before
No,
you were
it's never
here.
happened to me before.
Yes.
Right, it's
But
not
it's
all
okay.
about me, as you would say.
It
yes.
is about you sometimes, most of the
Sometimes,
time.
but not right now. Tonight it's about Bobby, who is our first Golden Apple recipient. He is a groundskeeper at Walled Lake Central High School. Bobby was nominated by David Rogers, Director of Bands at Walled Lake Central, because he does a fantastic job consistently taking care of the school's grounds. In particular, he is a vital part of the school's ability to have a successful marching band due to his reliability and the great care in his work. That marching band's competing for the state championship this weekend.
Yes.
Go band. David shared, Bobby always does a great job for us. Bobby quietly goes about doing his job in an excellent manner without seeking attention. He can be counted on to do a great job in a timely manner. These qualities serve our community well and provide a great example for others. Bobby is clearly self-motivated. He goes above and beyond to do a great job. Since he took over maintenance of the grounds at Walled Lake Central, the level of consistency and quality he has provided has been outstanding. Kyle Medier, principal at Walled Lake Central, supported Bobby's nomination, sharing, as our groundskeeper, Bobby takes great care to ensure that all of our outdoor facilities are ready for our student athletes, marching band members, and community to enjoy. Despite sometimes being given near impossible jobs like keeping our sidewalks ice-free during a Michigan winter, striping numerous athletic fields by himself, or fixing equipment that was manufactured during the Eisenhower administration, Bobby never complains and he always finds a way to exceed expectations and get the job done right. Bobby, thank you for all you do every day for the students and families at Walled Lake Central. It's our honor to recognize him this evening.
And Mr. Medier, would you mind coming up and getting his stuff? Would you be able to get it over to him? Thank you. Thank you, we appreciate it. Yep, thank you.
All right, tonight's second Golden Apple recipient is here, Joe Bell. Come on up. Joe, you get to stand right on the Walled Lake, right there. The most comfortable place in the room.
Whichever way you want.
Joe was nominated by his colleague, Dr. Nick Hamlin, assistant principal at Walled Lake Central, because Joe is in it for the students, and this admirable and genuine quality is evident each and every day at Walled Lake Central. Joe is a learner and he is self-actualized. He is happy to learn new things in order to help others, and that is usually his priority. However, he also shows interest in learning new things for no other reason than to become more knowledgeable and to grow. Even though Joe has a lot of experience in the field of education, he's always growing. He attends conferences, shows enthusiasm when presented with new ideas. Joe has done a lot of diversity, equity, and inclusion work at Walled Lake Central and has done a great job of bringing the student body together. The various student leadership groups like to work with him because he has a positive attitude, is willing to try new things, and always puts students first. Joe also mentors newer administrators at Walled Lake Central. He's always willing to listen, suggest, and advise, which helps coworkers feel confident and empowered. Kyle Medier, principal at Walled Lake Central, celebrated Joe's nomination, sharing, Mr. Bell knows that the role of assistant principal is one of extreme responsibility and importance, but he carries out his role with a sense of humor, extreme modesty, and a wise perspective that all administrators aspire to. Mr. Bell's roles are extremely broad, ranging from working with our special services department to ensuring that our school is a welcoming place for all members of our diverse student body, to helping individual students each and every day, and much more. Joe was also recently a nominee for State Assistant Principal of the Year by the Michigan Association of Secondary School Principals. Congratulations, Joe. And lastly, Joe, thank you for all you do each and every day for our students and families at Walled Lake Central. It's our honor to recognize you this evening.
If you want to say a few words, you may. It's up to you. You don't have to. Sure, yeah.
Right to to the podium.
Thank you.
You're making them run over there?
Yeah, because the live stream's got to pick this up.
All I wanted to say was thanks to everybody here for all your support and helping me help make my job easier to do every day. And gratitude to Nick Hamblin. He couldn't be here tonight, who nominated me, but he's doing some stuff with his family tonight. But it just means the most when you're recognized by a peer. It just really does mean the most. So like all of you, I just do it because I love kids and I love being part of the school. So thanks, everybody.
All right. Next, we have the Strategic Facility Planning Committee update.
Mr. Chatfield.
Thank you, Dr. Bernia. As you know, a district-wide committee of stakeholders representing all schools and many departments have been meeting to review data from the facility utilization study completed by Plant Moran Real Point last spring in an effort to assess the study's findings and develop considerations to utilize our facilities in a more efficient and cost-effective manner. Paul Wills from Plant Moran Real Point, who has been facilitating this process for us, is here tonight to provide an update on the status of the committee's work. Paul?
Thank you, Mr. Chatfield. Dr. Bernier, good evening, board. Tonight is an update. So again, we were here earlier as more of the process. We're actually here to talk about the last two community forums. We've also received some frequently asked questions, and also we'll talk about next steps relative to the utilization study update itself. So again, really the presentation overview is really taking a look at the four key aspects that we shared with the committee, and the committee is comprised of roughly 55 to 60 individuals. We'll talk a little bit about that. There's the October 10th survey with the questions and the responses. There's the frequently asked questions that are actually on the district's website, as well as the October 24th, and then we'll talk through kind of next steps with the committee as well as board activities through the end of the year. So again, what is the impetus of this 2023 utilization? It really came out of the 2018. So again, looking at enrollment. So to give a perspective, when the district first started looking at this in 2012, 2013, Walled Lake had 15,590 students. Last year, your audited count was 12,373, so that's a decrease of over 3,200 students in that 10-year period. We do know that out of the 2012, there was several schools and facilities that were looked at in terms of being resourced as well as downsized. The district realized some of those savings. But again, when you look at a 3,200 student decrease, obviously something has to be done going forward. So out of that, as we mentioned, there's a committee. Facility Utilization Committee is comprised of community members, administrators, teachers, parents, and staff, really to come with options. So again, you as the deciding entity of the district are really looking at these considerations and overlapping of it. What does it mean for your long-term goals and objectives, educationally, financially, operationally? So why is some of the declining enrollment? You saw this in February during our pupil enrollment. Again, in Oakland County, if you go back to 1990, there's over 17,000 live births. That's really the height of Oakland County. We're down to about 13,000. You saw the impact of COVID drop below about 12,750. Us, MCOG, U.S. Census Bureau, we're all kind of looking at this as the new reality for Oakland County and the state of Michigan going forward. So again, how does the district react to this from a utilization and facility standpoint? This is just the birth trends, again, looking at 0 to 5-year-olds, 6 to 11-year-olds, 12 to 17-year-olds, and obviously 18 and 24 as they go outside the boundary. So again, still that downward incline, and again, that's really just a direct relation of that large population born in the 2004, 2005, which is your current senior year, and then the 0 to 5s that we are looking at here in the next 5 years here in Walled Lake. This is more of a breakdown by grade. So the orange triangles in the upper left, or on the top, is your elementary. And again, you used to be at roughly 5,800. You're at 5,198, kind of in a 5-year projection. So again, roughly 800 students less. So to give you an idea, an elementary school holds about 400 or 500 students at that time point. In the middle, you have the high school, which again is starting to flatten out because again, people do want to move into Walled Lake. That's a secondary move-in. That's where we're not seeing such a steep decline like you'd see at other communities that are more fully built out with a lot of development land and a lot of movement going forward. And lastly, on the bottom, you have the middle school population. Again, back to 2020 or 2016, about 3,250, and you're about 2,400, so about 1,000 less at that level. So that bubble is kind of working its way through the system as we go through it. So this is a comparison really of kind of the grades by building. So you see the 22-23 enrollment. We know you just had your October count, so we'll update this as we go through the process here through December. This is really looking at what are the academic and programs. So Mr. Lyons did a great job in terms of explaining what programs are in which of the facilities, what are some of those opportunities for classrooms. So you can see, for instance, at Guest, there's 0 rooms unused. And you look at some of the others where there's 5 or 6 with specialties in that. So not just general ed, but we're looking at special education. We're looking at pre-K and early childhood. So this is really a full lens relative to that academic and programming going forward. We do the same thing at the middle schools. Again, taking a look at the enrollment from 2006, 2007 to where we're at today. Also the number of current open classrooms, also some of the special education and other considerations for those programs, and those utilization of rooms. And then lastly, we did that at the high school level, kind of looking at the 2006 to 2007 and then the 23-24 projected enrollment. So you can see pretty much middle school and the high school, you have that significant decline really in the last 10 years from that perspective. So switching gears, looked at the current enrollment by buildings. So again, just looking at a full lens. So right now you have 12 elementary schools, 4 middle schools, and 3 high schools. So you kind of see the average building per enrollment. We also looked at some of your peer groups. We looked at the top 15 districts of how you size up in terms of number of students per facility. So again, this is a concept. This was nothing that was suggested yet, but if you were to go, let's say, to 11 elementaries, 3 middle schools, 2 high schools, you'd be more in alignment with kind of some of your peer groups where 450 to 500 is at the elementary level, 800 about 1,000 students at the middle school level, and then obviously 1,500 to 2,000 would be at the high school level going forward. Again, this is a concept, so there's no names attached to it, simply a numbers analysis relative to the facilities and programming. Again, looking at the operational costs, so again, at the elementary level, you have about 700,000 square feet. You spend roughly $6.1 million a year. At the middle schools, you have just under 600,000 square feet, about $3.8 million per year. And at the high school level, you have just under 1 million square feet and about 5.3 of operational costs. When you look at utilization, you look at facility optimization, those are some of the dollars and cents that you actually did realize out of the 2011-12 study. And again, what are those considerations that the committee is going to look at to help you frame some of those conversations going into the future? Again, we talked about utilization. So again, we looked at total gen ed classrooms. We looked at the number of students per classroom and the capacities. So at the elementary level, you're at roughly 81% based on some of the projections of students per classroom. At the middle schools, that drops to 51%. You see there in the bottom. And then lastly, at the high school level, about 45%. So there is opportunity for, again, looking at programming, looking at utilization, and that was really the impetus of some of the questions that we'll look at here from the committee going forward. So I think some of that previous information you saw, but again, it was just good to kind of remind the committee that this is something that the board saw earlier in the year, and again, this was kind of the impetus of the why. So the first part of this, section 2, is really the questions. So there's 4 questions asked to the committee after the first presentation is, do you acknowledge that the district does have an issue with utilization, enrollment, and a significant decrease? Roughly 97% said yes. There has been a significant decrease. When you're looking at a drop of 3,200 students over 10 years, I think everyone would agree that's something that needs to be addressed going forward. Second question is, an effort to increase utilization at the high school, which of the following should be recommended? Again, explore options. That was almost 80% support. So look at options of putting programs, let's say, in support facilities into the high school. We have great examples across Southeast Michigan, across the state of districts who have done that with administration teams, partnering with communities, things of that nature. The next question, part of that question was reduce the number of high schools from 3 down to 2. And there's about 20% support for that decision going forward. Next question was at the middle school level, asking the same types of question. Again, 67% supported exploring options of expanding programs into that space that may not currently be there. And roughly 32, almost 33% said looking at a reduction of 4 to 3 middle schools going forward. At the elementary level, about 87, 88% said let's explore options. Again, those facilities were roughly 81%. Again, just over 12% indicated a reduction of those 12 middle school or 12 elementary schools for that going forward. So out of that, we actually had a roundtable discussion, which really came into some of the other analysis that we're going to talk about here tonight. So for instance, why didn't the facility studies take into the lab facility? Obviously, EAC, we're here tonight. Looking at pre-K. So we know pre-K for 4-year-olds is something that's in the budgets for school districts to consider. Where could that potentially be, knowing that you have an early childhood center as part of the last bond? Looking at different cohorts. So could you have a 5-6 facilities, a 7-8 facilities, still maintaining elementary and high schools? We looked at and discussed the adult transition program. They looked at some of the enrollments relative to the middle schools. And again, understanding how do you balance that with open enrollment and schools of choice. We also looked at some of the maintenance costs, looking at utilities going forward. Buildings that are at the near of end of life. So most of your facilities were built in the 60s, 70s, 80s. Again, most facilities could be used for 50 to 70 years. Is that part of the conversation? Like some districts look at 2 or 3 elementaries that have 250, 300 students, maybe build a larger one, but it's 21st century and you shut down 2 or 3, but you have 1. So that was something of the conversations that we took a look at. Redistricting. I know it's been a while since the district has done that. But again, looking at some of the patchwork of elementary boundaries to middle school, ultimately to high school. Taking a look at closing schools. So again, being cognizant of schools of choice and how that may affect private school versus public. Again, redistricting, and then also talking about northern and western. So again, the adult transitions program that was moved there in 2018 has grown almost 40%. What does that long-term projection look like for that individual program? So on the October 24th meeting, we kind of talked very specifically about the ESC. So this facility is about 56,000 square feet. So to give you an idea, that's about the size of an elementary school. We also talked about Twin Sun, so it's about 11,000, 12,000 square feet. It's a smaller facility. And then we also talked about adult transitions, which is roughly 17,000 square feet. Where is it currently at? Where are those facilities? So again, some of the questions were, where should some of these facilities be considered? You can see high school obviously had the most support in looking at relatively of utilizing some of the underspace for a program, let's say the administration facility. So you look at a Grosse Pointe. They had a standalone academic or administration building. They sold that. They moved into North. Birmingham Schools has done that. They moved into Groves High School. So there's a lot of samples of where that's been done going forward. Some of the Twin Sun programs, looking at the elementary levels, that was some of the conversations of where some of the elementaries may have lower utilization that could accommodate 6 to 8 classrooms on some of those support spaces. And then, of course, the adult transition was, it's been at Western since 2018. The students are integrated into that program. Are there opportunities to grow it there? Should there be a secondary site? So these are some of the questions and themes that came out of this question here going forward. October 24th, 2nd, was, again, some of the specific themes was close ESC. So again, relocating into a high school, potentially middle school. Again, looking at ATP and maybe moving it here to the ESC and allowing for future opportunity growth. So you can see some of these smaller puzzle pieces potentially being considered to help increase the utilization at the middle school and high school. Again, we talked about the secondary site for ATP, maybe at another high school to allow that program going forward. We mentioned the Twin Sun. Again, looking at the elementary programs, is this something that should be a single site? Could it be multiple sites? What are some of the program opportunities and challenges for that? One of the comments, ESC to Geisler, you can also include Twin Sun and ATP, so that facility is about 120,000 square feet. So if the district was to go down to 3 middle schools, you'd still reutilize that existing facility middle school, but it'd be more for support services and specialty programs. And then the last comment was closing the middle school and moving ESC and ATP into that facility. So again, these are just some of the themes that came out of that question number 1. Second part, should the district look at revising the cohort? So we spent a lot of time talking about the current K-5, 6-8, and 9-12 model. So almost 68% said the district should at least look at it and consider it and look at some of those options of what would that look like. So again, do you have a K-4? Do you have a pre-K-4? Do you have a 5-6 school with a 7-8 feeder? There's even some discussions of, do you have a 8-12 high school program? Some districts are looking at that, again, as options for consideration going forward. So again, how would that help utilization across the spectrum of the district? Talking about expanding electives at the middle school, again, about 75%. So right now you have a lot of staff that's traveling between middle schools for some of the electives. So it's often challenging from an academic lens to have full program participation for those students. So that's more of that academic review of utilization. So again, a lot of support for that going forward. And then the other question 4 was career tech readiness and education. So again, almost 98% supported this in terms of bringing back some of those programs that may have been off-site for years. I know you've got a partnership with the Oakland Schools Tech Center, but a lot of school districts are starting to look at that and saying, should we bring that back into our fold? What you're going to see below is actually some of those specifics of those themes that the district could potentially consider. So for instance, STEAM or magnet, gifted and talented at the middle school levels. Alternative education is another one. We have several districts that have brought that back into the high schools. It's an own separate area of the school. It's got its own bell times, again, but helping utilize some of that space. Daycare. Some districts are looking at daycare providers, like actually being a certified daycare licensee for either employees and also having electives for students potentially to take that. There's talk of early middle college. There's also talk of having potentially 2, I'll call it core 9 through 12 high schools, but maybe having a smaller magnet high school. I see that with some large districts of your nature where you've got 3 or 4 or 5 high schools, and how do you create some of those opportunities for a smaller feel for a high school. We did talk about the pre-K. There's also opportunities for a K-8 STEAM academy. So I know some of your neighboring districts have done that with some of their facilities. We talked about life skills, mental health classes for students and staff. And then some of the questions were more geared towards, let's not add more electives, but I think it's the opposite of looking at those really focused of saying, should we have specialties at each of the schools and create themes? We spent a lot of time talking about the CT, the vocational, and some of the college and life readiness programs. Some examples, I know Grand Rapids has a zoo school. They've got a nature camp school, some nature-based. So again, how does that play into some of those going forward? And then lastly is just partnering with private and community organizations. So Easter Seals, senior centers, the YMCAs, and others. I think those are some great examples of what other districts have done. Last question is, if you had to choose a facility to close, which one would it be? Just over 5% chose an elementary school, about 37% said middle school, 0% said a high school, so it's pretty strong. And again, we see that a lot. Those are the legacies of the district going forward. So, and then lastly, what you'll see on question 6 was just the others. So that was looking at the ESC, the Twin Sons, ATP, and any other facilities going forward. So again, this was some of the comments that came out of question 6. Again, if a school building had to be closed, that middle school should not be sold. It should be repurposed. Again, we talked about some of the square footages of those programs. Some people got even more specific of looking at how do you increase Wall Lake Western or Central, potentially a pre-K at elementary, but not at the high school, middle school. And then again, realigning elementary to three middle school, 3 high schools is really cleaning up that cohort going forward. So a lot of considerations, a lot to think about. So I think it was very helpful just to hear from the committee and kind of get a sense of, again, what are some of those non-negotiables. I think you saw the closed 3 high school question was a 0% response for support, so that's good to know going forward. So what are some of those next steps? So again, we talked about these opportunities and constraints. Some of these are budget constraints. So again, relocating facilities, it would take some sort of capital convert, let's say classrooms into some sort of ATP or others if it's getting relocated. Long-term planning. So again, your academics really should drive a lot of this utilization going forward. A lot of information still needed. Again, what was the fall count? How does that look in the next 5 years? What are those capital considerations that as a board you consider to help support some of these initiatives in the next 0 to 5 years going forward? So some of the next steps that we talked about, again, is really getting an idea of the pre-K for 4-year-olds. To give you perspective, if you have, let's say, 850 to 900 kindergartners, you'd expect that your pre-K population is somewhere in the 400 to 500 range. So where do you have a facility large enough to accommodate that population should it go in full effect? Again, the current cohort alignment, I'd love to hear the districts and the board's opinion on that because sometimes that helps drive some of the decision-making going forward. Consolidation, expansion of current future programs we've talked about. I think the target enrollment and utilization, I know in the previous 2011, they kind of had an idea of ranges for each of the types of facilities. Some districts actually incorporate that as kind of a year-to-year review going forward. And then lastly, the enrollment utilization, I think the district's done a great job in the last 10 years really taking a look at that going forward. So upcoming meetings, there is a community forum on November 13th. That's really to share with the community, very similar presentation tonight of kind of the preliminary findings and really be able to answer some of the questions from the community that maybe not are able to participate at the community level. At the Utilization Committee, we have one on Tuesday, November 28th, which I believe it may be November 30th, but we'll confirm that with Dr. Bernia and Mr. Chatfield. And we'll be back here on December 7th with a more delineated list of considerations. So we don't want to give the board, here's 50 things to do, but maybe here's the top 5 or 6 or 8 or whatever that is. Very similar to the 2012-13. They're actionable that the district feels could take on in the next 12 months, the next 24 months, and the next 60 months going forward. So with that, I'm going to turn over back to Dr. Bernia, Mr. Chatfield, and the board for any questions and thoughts.
Are there any questions or comments? Actually, I have one thing, and I'm not sure if it's an internal or if it's to our presenter. So one thing that stuck out to me when you mentioned back towards the beginning of the presentation, you were talking about how other districts use their buildings and the numbers, right? So one of the things that always clicks into my mind is, are we thinking about and are we looking at what does Walled Lake look like compared to those others that we're comparing to, especially with special education? So I know we talked about ATP, but I'm talking about those other rooms where ASD may have, smaller numbers in those rooms, et cetera. I know and I appreciate and would never micromanage that you all know how we're using our buildings, but make sure the committee understands that when we're looking at those numbers, that we may not be apples to apples to another district because we have a high percentage of special education, which means that we might have fewer kids in some of those classrooms, and therefore we might not look as efficient when you play the numbers game. Does that make sense, Dr. Bernia? So I don't know that we've gotten into that level of detail yet, but I just want to mention that kind of stuck out to me. Whenever we do that comparison, I just go, oh, what about?
No, that's great. So I actually put back up in the slides. So looking at, let's say at the elementary level, most districts have 3 to 6 elementary school facilities that have SXI, CI, et cetera. You start looking at the middle school levels and 5 to 8 classrooms would be about appropriate. So most middle schools are 25 to 30 classrooms, and again, of those above and beyond. And then lastly, at the high school level, 10 to 12 would be somewhere in that range. So I think from a peer group, you're there. I think the really telling point is, especially when you look at the middle school, high school level, when you go back to the 2006-7 enrollments and you're kind of looking at the 22-23, you understand like there is that opportunity. Again, if it's keep the special ed, like we think dedicating that space is very, very appropriate. It's how do you take some of that declining and repurpose it, let's say, for an ATP or, maybe ESC kind of gets split up. You have special services here and you've got communications here. We've seen a lot of different solutions, but I appreciate that President Casagrande to keep that lens in line, especially for the special ed. So.
Yeah, and I think it's important to point out, can you go back to the high school slide, Paul?
Yep.
So when Mr. Wills does this analysis, the 15 open rooms at Central, that accounts, that's 15, that doesn't, a room that's being used for special education programming is not part of that 15. Okay, so that's 15 empty classrooms, right? And so that's when we look at this and we kind of work through the configuration and work through the considerations, that is the, so if you take ATP out of Western, then your current room's open, that number's gonna go up, obviously. So that's something that we're gonna have to reconcile and gonna have to work through with the committee. And we're at this stage of the game now where we have enough feedback from them to really start to get down to some very specific, some very granular information that we're gonna talk to them about. And then the community forum will be really helpful on the 13th too.
Yeah, the last thing I will say in regard to special education is last time, I think lesson learned to be applied, just to be extremely transparent, is that we maybe didn't have all of the stakeholders in the special education who were aware that we might have some movement. And while sometimes those on paper look like small numbers of people, our special education students, many of them, change is extremely difficult for them. So I want to make sure that we are being extremely careful about, are we going to move any of those programs? Do we have to? And what is that going to do to their feeder patterns if we end up redistricting? And I'm not saying anything that I know we at the table here don't understand. And yes, every single student would be impacted, but sometimes, as an example, some of our ASD students have a hard time when there's construction and they have to go a different route to school. Imagine having to go to a different school. Yeah, yes, Mrs. Levin.
I just wanted to say thank you to the people that are serving on the facilities committee. I know it's, a lot of meetings in a short amount of time, and I can tell based on the, short answer responses that people are being very thoughtful about, the suggestions that they're making. They're not just clicking yes or no on a survey. They're actually giving us good feedback. So I really appreciate the time and all the people that are participating in that committee. It's good to see that engagement.
Okay. All right, I think we're all set. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Next, we have the new course proposal presentation. Dr. Bernia.
I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Kohansky.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Bernia. I'll read names and give my colleagues here a few minutes to make their way up. Mr. Scott Terry, science teacher at Walled Lake Northern. Mr. Scott Lindsay, the science department chair at Walled Lake Northern, and Mrs. Jennifer LaCrosse, our science curriculum coach, are here, and they'll be presenting a new course offering called Ornithology at Walled Lake Northern for the board's consideration. The presentation is today, but the board will be, I'll get to that in just a minute. This new course has been through a pilot year and a half now, and the curriculum is aligned with state and national standards. Program materials have been made available for the board's review, and the new course offering for the program of studies has been endorsed by the administration, and this presentation and a motion for approval of this course adoption will be presented at the December 7th, 2023 board meeting. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Terry and Mrs. LaCrosse and Mr. Lindsay, and let them share with you this new course proposal.
Well, thanks for having us. So ornithology, for those of you that might not know, is the study of birds. And as was read, while the course is based on next generation science standards, it hits on a lot of cross-country concepts, it has science and engineering practices. What's really, as somebody who's taught, I think last time I counted 13 different science classes in my time here at Walled Lake, what's really neat about it is when we teach biology, or when we teach chemistry, or when we teach physics, they really feel like they're taught in isolation. And then when we learn about something like ornithology, we can apply these things like evolution, reproduction, even physics of flight, and we can kind of apply all these things that are learned in all these other classes to a specific example that we continue throughout the year. So it's really kind of a neat way for the students to kind of learn about a lot of things they've learned in other classes and then how they apply to the real world. Now that doesn't mean that you can't do that same thing if you were studying fish or frogs or any other living thing out there. So why birds? Well, the answer is I love them. And I took a class in 8th grade when I was in school, and ever since that time, I've kind of always thought about creating a class about birds since I've been a teacher. And the other thing is, what kind of really spurred me to do this a few years ago and get this ball rolling was there was a survey done by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service about hobbies in the United States. And bird watching, at least people who identified as bird watchers on some degree, whether you went on vacations for birds or whether you just watched them in your backyard, was by far overwhelmingly the most common hobby in the entire country. And so it's really, whether you participate in it or not, it's a really common thing for people to do. So that's kind of that first slide. I'm not going to read through everything. You're all capable of reading. So the first year, either I'm a better salesperson than I realized. The very first year when I told the students about it, we had 106 kids sign up. And, if you start a new course, like even a different type of chemistry or physics, there's often some sort of packaged curriculum you can start with. With ornithology, I've done some research, and as far as I can tell, there's no year-long ornithology course anywhere in the country at any high school level. There's a few high schools that do a semester course. So most of it is me trying to adopt a college-level curriculum appropriate for high schoolers. So this second year, we actually went up to four sections. We have almost 130 students signed up. So as you can see, we do a lot of project-based stuff. We spend a lot of time outside. We participate in eBird's, eBird is run through the Cornell Laboratory of Ornithology, and they do a lot of citizen science-based work where they use data that everybody collects, anybody in this room could collect. And so we participate in that. We participate in Feeder Watch, which started yesterday, November 1st. And in the spring, we'll participate in Nest Watch, where we monitor birds nesting around Walled Lake Northern. And so all of that data gets collected through the Laboratory of Ornithology. And so it's really kind of another really neat way for students to see how things that they can do, legitimately participate in, can be used by scientists to study big world phenomenon. In fact, today in class, we were reading an article about how scientists use eBird data to monitor changes in migration and for climate change, which is a big thing. And so these kids are contributing to that sort of stuff. So it's all based on, as it's up there, the Handbook of Bird Biology, which again is published by the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. I do think it's worth really pointing out that the last fall, I mean, once this got approved, then it kind of became real, and I thought, oh crap, how are we gonna do this? And so I started reaching out, and I created a Donors Choose, and the community, former students of mine, parents of students, they raised $1,200, and we bought 14 pairs of binoculars that way. Kawa, which is a Japanese-based company, if you know anything about hunting or anything, Kawa is a really premium company. They donated 20 pairs of binoculars, and then Vortex is another very popular optics company. They donated 10 pairs so far, and both of them donated spinoscopes. So we've gotten a lot of support for a brand new course, which is great, because no money out of your pocket yet. Well, very, very little money. So, again, I've touched on a lot of these things already. So in the fall, when the weather's nice, we have spent a lot of time outside. Again, they're learning how to identify birds. They're learning how to report the data. And then in the wintertime, we're doing more of the kind of book-based curriculum stuff about the things I mentioned earlier. So they're all up there. We do a fair amount of like sketching and journaling, because that's a really good way to make detailed observations and keep track of your sightings. So the kids actually do quite a bit of sketches throughout the year. And last year we built a whole bunch, we got a Foundation for Excellence grant, and we built a whole bunch of birdhouses. And so again, monitoring and maintaining birdhouses around Walled Lake Northern. So I've got some quotes up there. We don't need to read through all of them. I'm not naive enough to think that all the kids are loving birds, but it is amazing to me how many kids are like, I get it, this is kind of cool. I had a girl just the other day, I put that quote in there. She just came up to me and she said, I just find myself noticing more stuff, which is a win to me, I think. So at the very end, we've got some pictures here. Kids outside, kids doing stuff. I didn't mention last year we grew almost 800 native plants from seeds. And then I graded AP exams, and so there was a time period in there, but we planted some of them, and we donated a lot to staff at Northern. But this year we plan on growing a whole bunch more native plants and spreading our native garden at Northern. So, yeah, that's kind of everything we prepared, but I know there's questions.
So I can tell you are super passionate about birds, and I think that's awesome. I think that anybody who's ever been a second grader at Commerce Elementary would find this class to be awesome, because they do a bird unit. It's like a whole thing. It's really fun.
I've had a bunch of kids come up and say, hey, I did that as my bird, my focus bird in elementary.
Right, black-capped chickadee. I've never heard so much about a black-capped chickadee before in my life. And when my kids were in second grade, right? There you go. So it's awesome. What I wonder is if students at Central or Western were interested in taking a class, is there a carbon copy of you? How will those kids have this opportunity?
If there were enough interest from students from Central or from Western and a teacher qualified to teach that, then that would be a course that could be run at either of those schools.
And how do high school students find out about the option to be interested so that you could get a count?
Right, so students have a program, they have a program of studies, and that's how they pick the courses they want to take. I mean, they have required courses for graduation, but as they get older, juniors and seniors, there are electives in there. So in the science section of that program of studies, there's multiple science electives. So they would choose that. If the interest was high enough, then that could possibly be run at the other two schools.
And what makes a teacher qualified to teach this besides loving birds?
Right, this is just a secondary science endorsement.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Mr. Peterson.
Couple questions. First, one question with two parts. when this is more operational, and then I have one comment. I think I'll start with a comment. I want to commend you for going out and finding that, and securing some seed money and some donations. That's very commendable.
It took a lot of effort.
A lot of effort, I'm sure. So number two, the two questions I have that's really a two-parter, I'm really kind of more interested in the operational side. So how long has it taken for you to get to this point, sitting in front of us tonight in the process?
Of actual kind of starting the ball rolling, I
Yep.
think 2 years before I ever taught it. So I guess this would be almost 3.5 years.
3.5 years.
Yeah.
And the other part of that is, in any part of that process, were you ever turned down?
By an admin? or-
Anywhere in the process?
No.
Did the process turn you down?
No, actually, once, I mean, so the former Miss Lacrosse was John Gregg, and I kind of kicked the idea around with him a few times, and every time he was said, hey, I'll get you the paperwork and you get the ball rolling. And then, so Western's gonna be beautiful. I was at Western for a long time, and I used to actually, like in passing time, go stand at the end of the hall and look outside, because we didn't have windows. And so, so I'm not kidding, I know that sounds kind of funny, but when I went to Northern, and I spent a few years looking out the windows at this beautiful property, it really kind of motivated me to be like, I want these kids to be seeing these birds. And so, as soon as I said, John, I want to do it, he was all for it.
That's great. Commend you, and I think you are on a good trajectory.
Yeah, thanks.
Mrs. Fernandez, I think you wanted to speak.
Yeah, I had a couple of questions that just go along with adding a new elective into the curriculum. And so is there something that goes away? Something maybe older or less relevant or less multidisciplinary that goes away when we add a new elective like this?
No, so anytime we add an elective to our curriculum, it does compete with other electives in the building, right? Whether it's other science electives or other non-science electives. So in a way, he started up saying he's a good salesman. We do a curriculum fair every year at the high school, and that's a chance for all the elective courses basically to sell their courses. And, in some cases, if you're a good salesman and you can present that curriculum, you're going to get a lot of interest in your course, right? So there is that risk of other electives maybe suffering a little bit from it, but we haven't noticed a big difference here at
Especially
Northern
if you get
so
them
far.
outdoors, right? That's got to be a
Yep.
great selling point.
Yep. And our hope in adding this was that not to steal from other electives, but we give kids more opportunity to take more science rather than just the 3 years that are required.
Yeah,
So,
well, I think my other follow-up questions were a little bit along that lines. You did a great job of presenting how this can be multidisciplinary and bring in all of those different sciences and kind of make sense of putting them together. But so is there some prerequisite? I mean, will kids even get that if they've only ever taken one track of science or
So
another?
the prerequisite for this course, you have to have biology, chemistry, or physics. So juniors and seniors
Okay.
would be able to take this course.
So that's 2 of the 3 or just any one of the 3?
So biology required
Okay.
and chemistry
Chemistry
or
or
physics, yes.
Okay, that makes sense. And then I thought you mentioned you were grading AP papers. So is this feed into or support kids that are on a path to take an AP science exam?
Oh, gosh, sorry. For me, in my experience, it's the opposite. So a lot of my ornithology students I had last year in AP, it tends to be the AP I teach tends to be juniors. And so far, the ornithology has been more seniors.
Yeah.
It's more of, remember when we learned this, and now we're seeing it in action. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Siegler?
First of all, thank you for bringing this forward. I think it's very innovative. When you're looking at college level curriculum that we are adapting for high schools, I think it's phenomenal, and the crossovers into all the other things that we would be looking at regarding climate change, regarding migration patterns, and everything else that goes with it. I think it's a wonderful, wonderful opportunity, and I want to thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. We appreciate your time today.
Thanks.
Okay, it's time for us to move on to public commentary. I do have some cards here. If anybody else wants to speak, you need to get your card up here now to Ms. Soval. All right. Tonight, as you address the board, you'll come up to the podium, and you will have up to 3 minutes to speak. If you do get close to that 3 minutes, Mrs. Levin will be our timekeeper today. She will let you know. And we will ask you to finish up if you are still speaking at the 3-minute mark. Also wanted to ask that we continue to have respectful conversation. And if there is somebody who does need to have a follow-up by either the administration or the board, we will try to do that in a timely manner. Just depends how many we have, but we do try to do that within a few business days. All right, our first person is Sandy Dowse.
Wow, my card was on the bottom and I get to speak first. This is good. It's a good start. What possible topic could I choose that would unite everyone here tonight? Students, teachers, school board members, administrators, safety in our district. I'm hopeful that we can finally lay aside the agendas that have little to do with, and in fact, may war against, the goal of graduating capable, healthy, and educated young people who want to build up our state and country rather than tear it down. It's sad to think that a room full of reasonably intelligent adults cannot debate policy decisions without the need for law enforcement to be on site. It's even more distressing to realize that our own example of the inability to find common ground in curriculum and to communicate respectfully without resorting to deliberately making our differences the main topic of discussion when we meet is our problem. Diversity has been a stated goal, is this working? Yeah, in academic, corporate, and government circles for quite a while now. I'm guessing that we have championed a cause that neither is our true goal or our honest purpose. If diversity was the objective, people wouldn't be trying so hard to eliminate diversity of thought. So, what do you say we come around together around what should be a unifying message? Safety. Oakland K-9's security option at the last meeting seemed to have a viable option to improve safety of students. Could the agenda at the next meeting please include feedback about Oakland K-9's offer that they, I believe, made last year too, to improve the safety? So please clap, everyone who wants safety.
Ron Lippett.
Good evening. I'm Ron Lippett from Commerce Township. My wife Denise and I are 20-year residents of the community. We have 3 daughters who have thrived in Walled Lake schools, including our youngest, who is currently a sophomore at Walled Lake Northern. I come to you this evening concerned more than ever for our district's children who do not fit into traditional binary categories. Last month, I listened to a number of speakers at this very podium question the district's policies regarding gender affirmation, Title IX, and even bathroom policies, including one suggestion that suggests that schools are complicit in sexualization of children, and the notion that a faith-based curriculum would be the appropriate corrective action. It may surprise no one in this room that LGBTQ youth are more than 4 times as likely to attempt suicide than their peers, according to the Trevor Project, and more than 1.8 million LGBTQ youth seriously consider suicide each year, with at least 1 actual attempt every 45 seconds. In addition, 36% of LGBTQ youth report that they have been physically threatened or harmed in school, and those who did attempted suicide at nearly triple the rate of those who didn't last year. Last month, I applauded a comment made here that reinforced the notion that having at least 1 accepting adult in the home reduces the risk of suicide by as much as 40%. But in the absence of this acceptance, Walled Lake Schools, knowingly or not, plays an integral role in the health and welfare of those who are most vulnerable, especially those who are marginalized. Research indicates that LGBTQ youth who found schools as gender affirming reported not just lower attempts at suicide, but significantly higher levels of self-esteem. All this is to say, I applaud our school district with every policy and action it takes to reinforce its support of LGBTQ community they serve. It's difficult to measure the life-changing impact that you are having on people's lives. Most especially the amazing work our teachers take on each day, teaching our youth in this ever-changing political environment, and the often thankless work that the school board tackles in their pursuit of its ideal, every child, every day. So school has become a refuge for many in our community, a place outside of their own home where access to teachers, peers, and clubs, and the logistics of a caring school environment are desperately needed to support them. Lastly, I understand there are people in this room who will never accept the notion of school playing a part in gender affirmation, and I get it. Please know we hear you. I would simply remind you that the children includes those with legitimate risks to their well-being because of their gender identity. Walled Lake Schools finds itself with a critical role to play in their health.
Time.
Our community supports you in that effort. Thank you.
Teresa Renaud. Teresa, yes, thank you.
Good evening, elected officials and school district leaders. Special shout out once again to Mr. Rousseau for following up with me from last week in a very timely manner. As I continue to research and try to understand the facts with regard to our bathroom policy, which is currently, like many, many, many districts, an integrated bathroom policy, including God-made gender and the evolving man-made gender identity. I come with some new information tonight, and I think it's actually good information based on some additional facts that are happening in our country and in our Michigan. We don't have to worry about breaking any ground and doing anything new because some groups are already doing that. I want to highlight a couple of two national and one Michigan incident that's occurring, and then land on the Michigan one with a request. Earlier in October, a Pennsylvania school district reversed their school board policy and mandated that they go back to a policy requiring students to use the bathrooms associated with their biological sex. Now, they are requiring that there are single bathrooms available as well. Later last month in October, in St. Charles County out of Missouri, they are submitting to be voted on in November a new policy that would require students to identify they would use bathrooms and locker rooms that match the sex on their birth certificates. Hasn't been voted on yet. So two national, there's probably many more, but these are two that I wanted to bring tonight, that have already started to move and identify what's happening with school board districts identifying the bathroom issue. Where I want to land tonight is with this Michigan lawsuit out of Vicksburg Community Schools. There's a parent group that's suing the district for their policy. And it's a policy that's similar to ours. And the issue that I think that's interesting is that they're getting sued for not communicating to the parent community what the policy was and is. So a number of incidences created an outrage with the parent community such that there were just a great amount of concern that they weren't warned that their kids could be assaulted. So my ask is that this district would at least publicly communicate with the district, perhaps in a newsletter or in a formal other letter, that based on what you feel the legal requirements are, and again, I do understand we're not the only ones, but the parent community needs to understand what their children are required to follow. Thank you.
Becky Behrens.
Good evening, members of the board and Dr. Bernia and cabinet members. My name is Dr. Becky Behrens, and as we all know, there is a big debate about the low reading scores across America and how best to fix the problem. It's referred to as the reading wars. Well, let me share with you why I have a personal interest in this issue. Some years ago, one of my nieces, who was in middle school in the Birmingham School District, came to me asking for help with her schoolwork. I knew that she had some reading problems, but I didn't know the extent of it. I asked her to read some of her homework material out loud to me. She was not a fluent reader. She came to a word she didn't know, and she just couldn't even pronounce the word. I said, just break the word down. She didn't know what I meant. I said, can you identify the syllables in the word? She could not. Then she informed me that it wasn't that big of a deal because her teacher told her to skip a word if she didn't know what it was. And also she was told that if she got the general idea of what the sentence or paragraph was about, then it was okay. I was surprised and a bit disturbed about this. I discovered that she was in IEP and was receiving help in reading at school. So I started attending her IEP meetings with her teacher and reading specialist. I don't think they liked having me present at those meetings. I asked questions. They kept telling me and my niece how great she was doing and not to worry, as there would always be help for her, even in college. I said, but she can't read well. I was ignored. A few years later, she was still struggling, and one day when we were reading a passage of literature together, she got up and walked out of the room. She went to her bedroom and started crying. She told me, I am so upset. I just can't read well. I try. I want to be successful in life, but I'm scared. She is an only child raised by a single parent, my brother, who was so overwhelmed with work and significant health problems of his own, he had no time to spend with her. I hired all kinds of tutors and specialists. From that point on, I spent many hours with her trying to help her. She did not get the help she needed in college, as was promised. She has improved, fortunately, but reading will always be a struggle. It is my understanding that we use Lucy Calkins' units of study in our early grades for reading instruction in our school district. The Teachers College of Columbia University in New York City has, according to my understanding, dissolved their relationship with her, which is where she started with her teaching and writing project. Why? Because they felt her balanced literacy approach to reading, which has predominated in the U.S. for decades, is seriously flawed and amounted to educational malpractice. I'm almost finished. I would ask that our teachers and specialists reconsider whether Calkins materials is the best that we should be using. I don't know. I appreciate that Mrs. Kozansky has introduced phonics instruction since she assumed her position in our school district. And scores have improved, and I hope this information will be shared in detail with parents and community members. Thank you.
Thanks. Robert Goffey. Robert Goffey.
Okay. As you know, I've been coming to these meetings for quite some time, ever since the COVID years, and when we started learning about some of the things that were going on in schools, not just here, but across the country. And, you know, I've been voicing my opinions on a variety of issues related to education and the general welfare of our society, civil society. I've introduced and recommended several books to the board in hopes you would read them and understand the viewpoint of parents, especially conservatives. The events, and why I want to talk tonight is the events in Israel and Gaza Strip over the past few weeks highlight my fears for what's going on in America and why it's important for us to fight against the lies embedded in critical race theory and why we must remove all forms of DEI that advocate for preferential treatment based upon skin color, religion, or any other demographic. Identity politics is dangerous for everyone, including our children. Is it any wonder we have protests breaking out on college campuses all over the country in favor of Hamas? Anti-Semitism has been festering in our government and institutions for a long time, just waiting for the opportunity to show itself in full bloom. Why is it that college students and recent grads represent the vast majority of the Hamas fan club? Because they have been taught to hate all their lives, much of it in school. Now we have an anti-white racism growing across the country with our leaders claiming white supremacy is the top threat to America today. I say hogwash. Where is it? I can name dozens of major threats being ignored while CRT and DEI are being pushed through every segment of society, including the military. Teaching our children to hate America because it is supposedly built on slavery and white supremacy, and that they are either part of an oppressed or part of the oppressors only stokes the cauldron for further angst and division, eventually ending with Armageddon. One of the books I've recently read is this one, called Cynical Theories. It actually says critical and scratched out to say cynical theories. It explains in depth how critical theory came out of postmodernism. It also does an excellent job of thoroughly debunking postmodernism. Hence, all critical theories, CRT and all these, are based upon a false foundation. Unfortunately, much of our academia has embraced this false theory and used it to conjure up and implement all kinds of destructive ideas.
30 seconds.
Just my opinion, but that may be why the American education system has continued to sink ever since the inception of the Department of Education. Once again, I implore you, the Walled Lake School Board, to ban anything that resembles critical theory, whether it be CRT, transgender theory, fat theory, or any of the myriad others. Yes, do help those who need help as best you can, but do not teach your kids to hate one another because of their immutable physical characteristics. Thank you.
Hal Wolf.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to begin by stating the following anonymous quote is not aimed at any person or group. It's merely a statement I ascribe to and support. Also, it may be food for thought for those listening. The quote goes as follows: teachers who don't want parents to know what they are teaching students shouldn't be teaching students. Further, it was once again stated that we should leave it to the professionals at our last board meeting. Up until recently, I feel that is what we have done. That being the case, many find the outcome of this unsatisfactory. Thus, the discussion of doing a better job of vetting current and proposed curricula by some of the board members last time is good news to me. That I find most refreshing, and I say, once again, good. Thank you.
Michael Weiss.
Michael Weiss, 25-year Commerce resident. At the board meeting of October 5th, there was a rambling negative mishmash commentary regarding the Edgenuity online courses, which were up for renewal. There was concern about what might be in the teacher's guide, and teachers may mistakenly teach things that board members do not agree with. There was negative discussion about teaching of DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. These online courses support over 600 students in multiple ways. Not approving this course software would have created total chaos and hardship for many students. A negative vote was prompted by the possibility of there being LGBTQ-related content. This rambling speak came across as stumbling, unorganized, unprepared, anti-LGBTQ, and an embarrassment to the entire board, especially to the new board members that try to add intellectual commentary to the board meetings. Fortunately, the software was approved, barely. Concern was voiced about Walled Lake schools, focusing on certain children with certain beliefs and feelings, and not other children with other beliefs, and not giving them the same respect. There was concern that if anything is said or presented that focuses on certain issues or beliefs possibly relating to LGBTQ, equal time should be given to Jesus Christ and the Ten Commandments. It was said we have a long history of prayer in the schools and that the Ten Commandments being on our walls. Maybe in the private parochial schools some attended, but not in the public schools I attended in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. It was inferred it should be okay to bring religion into the public schools because our Constitution refers to it. That is wrong. Religion is not mentioned in the U.S. Constitution. The U.S. Constitution never explicitly mentions God or the divine. During the board meeting, it was stated that every life comes from the Creator and every life has value, that we are most blessed when we live in the light of how we are designed by the Creator, how we were designed to live, or at least how some think we should live. There was a comment about the decline in societal morality, insinuating that it is because of the teachings in the Wall Lake schools. Teaching morality is an important part of the school, but it does not start in the schools. It starts with our parents. At a later point in the commentary, Ms. Casagrande, the board president, stopped the discussion and asked, what does all this have to do with online curriculum approval? I think most of the board was wondering the same thing by the looks on their faces. This discussion then continued. One can disagree with a person's lifestyle, but that one can still be loving, maybe through a deep belief in Jesus Christ. A person can try to speak the truth to the students in the Wall Lake schools, but maybe a particular definition of the truth is really disguised as hate.
Megan Yang. What is it? Young. I'm so sorry. Well,
too bubbly.
Well, thanks for correcting me.
no worries.
I appreciate it.
My name is Megan Young, and I have two daughters in the district, one in middle school and one in elementary school. I'm here about the food service in the elementary schools. Sorry. So since the last meeting, I did try to reach out. I contacted the lunch lady. I asked if I could just see some pictures of the food since we're not allowed in the schools. And, you know, if I wanted the curriculum, I would call the teacher and they would provide it. She told me no, I had to call Human Resources. So I called the principal. I asked if I could get some pictures. She told me no, I had to call Julie. So I called Julie. I asked for some pictures. So I did leave everybody a packet, and if you wanted to open it, I was going to try to show you the difference of batch cooking and cooking it from an oven and then keeping it in a warmer so you could see the difference, but I could only get one picture, so I guess it's gonna be like which one doesn't belong. But, so when she did provide the one picture, I asked if I could get a couple more, and then she said no, and then she came back and said that then she did send a tubby sub, and I said, no, I would like some more food-based kitchen options, not the one there's 9 other schools that didn't get that day. But, so my main concern is today is I'm gonna give some numbers. 30% of the district is in the poverty level, so I did see that it was 450 kids per elementary school. So that would be about 135 kids per school times 12 schools, that's about 1,620 kids every day that depend on you guys for lunch and breakfast. I'm going to give you a lot of numbers, and then it's just going to all kind of go together in the end. So I'm going to start about, like, since you're not selling snacks, the loss of the snacks. So we've been in school 47 days around about. I gave you a low end of selling $62 a day at a school. So if you times that, that would be $2,914. But if you times that by 12 schools, you are now negative in the red, negative $34,964 that you could have made by selling snacks. And I guess that this has been going on longer than these numbers. So I know when I was looking at the pictures, I was thinking of the ways that you could save some money. I did see that everything was like a cup, like a fruit cup or an applesauce. And those are really expensive. You know, those are almost like the same price as fresh fruit. And that would accommodate the same amount of kids. But now I'm going to go into the staffing. So most of the lunch ladies are moms, and we all of us do have about, 40 seconds? Okay, 2 jobs. So I did look up, and if I did apply for a job, I would, you only have 2 options, and so it's 3.75 hours a day or 5.5 hours a day. So roughly, if I were to break it down, the lunch ladies are making between $700 a month and $1,155 at the top end, and there's no breaks, and there's a gap between lunch and your break.
Time.
Okay. Okay. Sorry. So So to end it, I guess, since I didn't get to all of it, I was just trying to say that if you took that money from the snacks that you could make, because if you sold your snacks every day, you would make, I don't know, $14,880 a month. If I took out the profit or what you paid for it, you would make $9,000 a month. So if you did that, you could pay for 9 lunch ladies at your 3.75 hours, or you could pay for 5 lunch ladies at 5.5 hours. So it would, I'm just trying to think if you have a solution to the problem of, you know, if you could balance it out. So
Thank you.
that is all.
Tim Sawmiller.
Good evening, Tim Sawmiller, Commerce Township. I am a cisgender male using pronouns he, him, and his. I think most people believe that providing free lunches to disadvantaged kids is a good thing, right? And I think most people believe tutoring and some extra learning to support kids that are struggling or have special needs is also a good thing, right? Well, these are examples of equity. Why is that word such a scare word to some people? These people like to emphasize equality over equity. Last month, a man criticized the idea of free lunches for all students. Well, that's an example of equality. Is this hypocrisy or just a lack of understanding of these terms? And how does feeding hungry kids and tutoring struggling kids and making kids feel comfortable with who they are equate to Marxism? These folks don't even know what Marxism is. It's an economic theory, by the way. What is that to do with schools and helping kids escapes me. One speaker even equated equality with socialism. Socialism is government ownership of business and industry. Neither of those terms is about feeding kids and teaching kids and accepting kids for who they are. As for the unintended consequences of free lunches, I'll take the intended consequences any day, which is feeding hungry kids so they can learn and excel in school. Imagine a faith so empty that bringing prayer into the public schools is following Jesus, but bringing in free lunches is not. Faith is something held near and dear by many people, but faith is also different for many people. DEI is not a religion, by the way. The board member who wants to inject faith in Jesus into public school decisions needs to be reminded that injecting faith and Jesus into that process is inappropriate. Otherwise, we need to be including the Prophet Muhammad and the philosopher Buddha and the Talmud and several other religious prophets and philosophers. Keep religion out of the public schools. You can't just pick one, so we exclude all of them. That's the law, and that's what's in the Constitution. And by the way, the Constitution of the United States does not mention a creator. Finally, I got cussed out royally at the October 5th board meeting by a seemingly Marxophobic fella during the break after public commentary. This guy also cussed out a woman using the same offensive language. Presumably he's not a Christian, because I know of no Christian who would speak to people in that manner. I hope he can heal from whatever ails him. Thank you.
Christine Titus.
Good evening. I'm going to talk about something way different. First of all, happy first anniversary, Dr. Bernia, on being our superintendent. Thank you so much for your service. I'd like to talk about thankfulness. We're in the month of Thanksgiving, and just wanted to let you know some of the things I'm thankful for. Besides my family and friends, I'm thankful that I get to do work in a profession that I'm passionate about. I've heard it said that if you're passionate about what you do, it's not really work, and that's how I feel about teaching. I'm thankful for our board and administration and the support I and my colleagues receive for what we love doing on a daily basis. Speaking of colleagues, I'm thankful for my work family and the opportunity to teach beside them. And finally, I'm thankful for the students I've taught, that I teach now, and that I'll teach in the future because I learn as much from them as I hope they learn from me. So that's what I'm thankful for during this month of November. And my final thought is go band. Good luck at States on Saturday.
Sorry, Paula Small, I did not have my mic on.
I thought she was suffering the same ailment.
Good evening, I'm Paula Small from Walled Lake Central, and I'm here to give you good news from Walled Lake Central. So you've all heard our band is kind of good, and we're going to the state championships. By the way, it's a unified band now, not just ours. I'll give my props to Western. So they're performing on Saturday at 12:31 p.m. at Ford Field. Currently seated second in the state. Other good news. Maddie Pavic is the state champ, high school equestrian EWD state champ. Paige Holler, one of my students, I'm sure I caused this. No. Qualified as a freshman for state cross-country championship. In her first year, we hope to see much more. This one I do actually have something to do with. My little tiny Model UN club went from 2 members to 20 members, and we're getting ready for our first competition. Giving Tree and CASA donated over 200 boxes of cereal to the homeless. And also the Giving Tree and CASA donated 2,040 pairs of socks to the homeless for PBJ outreach. Same 2 clubs volunteered at PBJ outreach, making and distributing food to the homeless. The Giving Tree students have also been volunteering at Pleasant Lake and at Meadowbrook several times this year. 8 students have achieved the seal of biliteracy so far this year, with many more to take the test soon. In keeping with our commitment to promote a culture of inclusiveness, our unified sports program has grown to include unified soccer, which recently finished its first season. Central's DECA Club is up and running, and we will be competing at our districts in December. This year, we have 24 students enrolled in our work-based learning program, with as many as 30 in the second semester. Students are working hard in their jobs. They are really representing Walled Lake Schools amazingly in the community. We currently have at Central signed up for over 700 AP tests to be taken in May. We made the AP honor roll at the bronze level. This distinction recognizes schools whose AP programs are delivering results for students while broadening access. It reflects a commitment to increasing college-going culture, promoting opportunities for students to earn college credit, and maximizing college readiness. And the last one, No Place for Hate is planning an activity called The Humans of Walled Lake Central. Thank you.
Sandra Brow-Gresh. Sandra Gresh.
Hi, I'm Sandy Bruff-Gresh. I'm a teacher at Walled Lake Central. I have more good news to share. It's a tough act to follow. She got all the good stuff, right? There's more. AP research students are beginning to plan their method for their own research projects. Our AP government students have tried to make a balanced budget while keeping public approval high on a game from iCivics. Student leadership and student council is kicking off their annual canned food drive this Saturday. Student leadership visited Hospitality House yesterday on November 1st and learned a fun fact. Our canned food drive is by far their largest donated supporter each year. Last year, Central donated over $13,000 in monetary donations and food donations to Hospitality House. No other donating group reached the 4-digit numbers, and we have reached 5 digits. Our anatomy classes this week started practicing using scalpels and probes while carving pumpkins. Our forensics class dusted fingerprints in the hallways and discovered a lot of them. The Giving Tree is donating candy to U.S. troops overseas. Our Mental Health Matters Student Club is up and running and has met 3 times so far this school year, sponsored by Mrs. Yarbrough. 4 Walled Lake Central students, along with Ms. Yarbrough and Mr. Johnson, attended the virtual Student Mental Health Summit on September 28th to learn more about programs that are happening in high schools across the state of Michigan and any takeaway ideas that they can then implement at Walled Lake Central. Walled Lake Center is now offering 4 different levels of physics classes. We offer regular and honors physics students learning about Newton's laws by investigating forces through a bowling ball activity. Bowling balls and rubber mallets in the hallway. It's quite fun. This is the first year Central has offered AP Physics 1, which is an algebra-based AP Physics course. There are 35 students enrolled in AP Physics 1. This is our first year running it. And they are currently investigating friction. AP Physics C students, which is our calculus-based AP Physics course, conducted a lab to investigate the relationship between air drag and velocity. And my chemistry students, when we had our beautiful weather last week, we were drawing atomic models with sidewalk chalk all over the sidewalks all around the school. Thank you very much.
Going to move on to administrative commentary. Dr. Bernia.
Tonight we're going to open with Dr. Lons.
Nothing tonight, thank you, sir.
Mr. Durkin?
Nothing this evening, Dr. Bernia.
Mrs. Kohansky?
Just a real quick update. I've been really excited over the last month or so. I've been working with the high school team over at Walled Lake Western as they're getting ready for all that new building addition and the new academic wing. We are looking and examining lots of really new, creative, flexible furniture that will go into those spaces. So that's work that's been really exciting. I've been spending a lot of time over at Western for meetings with different departments and groups. And I had a chance to walk through, and I don't want to steal any of Mr. Chatfield's thunder here, but I had a chance to walk through the new academic wing at Western and see the construction and the progress. They're already painting. And they're already, windows are in, they're running duct work. It looks like, we're ready to get some heat going in there so that those contractors can maybe find that this cold snap isn't affecting them as much. So it was really exciting to see, and the progress is just really remarkable. So thank you.
Ms. Muir?
Nothing today, Dr. Bernia.
Mr. Chatfield?
Thank you, Dr. Bernia. Just to piggyback on what Mrs. Kohansky mentioned, the enclosure at Western is nearly complete. All of the windows are on, and of course the envelope is nearing completion with details to be finished, which is allowing, as you just heard, interior finishes to begin. Temporary heat has been started up and pumping through the facility, so we're in great shape to continue some pretty aggressive construction throughout the course of the winter. So again, looking forward to having our opening next fall. In addition, the high school team buildings are underway at all 3 high schools. These are the facilities that are going to be located out near the stadium athletic fields. All of the utilities have been installed, and we're waiting for final approvals for those. And that will be followed by foundations and block walls, and you'll see some structures taking shape there soon. And finally, I hope, Dr. Bernie, I don't steal any of your thunder, but I just wanted to say how enjoyable it was yesterday for Cabinet to have lunch at Dublin Elementary. We were served the whole grain pancake bites with turkey sausage, sweet potatoes, and a fresh banana. And I have to tell you, it was a really good meal. And just for clarification, those meals, which are prepared the day before with frozen products that remain frozen while they are delivered to the elementary schools, are cooked on site. So the first time those meals are cooked is at the elementary school where they are delivered to. So I think there's some misconceptions about that, and I just wanted to make that clarification. But looking forward to the next time. Thank you.
Mr. Russo.
Thank you, Dr. Bernia. I don't think I'll steal any of your thunder. As part of the consent agenda tonight for the Board of Education, it's my pleasure to announce the appointment of Ms. Tikia Watkins to the position of Supervisor of Special Services. Ms. Watkins has most recently served in Walled Lake Consolidated Schools as Coordinator of Special Services since August of 2022. Prior to joining Walled Lake, Ms. Watkins held a host of teaching and leadership roles within special education in Romulus Community Schools. Ms. Watkins has a Bachelor of Science in Special Education from Western Michigan University and a Master of Arts in Educational Leadership from Wayne State University. She currently holds a school administrative certificate as well as full approvals for both Director and Supervisor for Special Education. And pending approval, Ms. Watkins will begin her post as Supervisor of Special Services on Monday, November 6th. In addition, I'm thrilled to announce, with board approval, the recommendation for Ms. Julie Omer to the position of Assistant Superintendent for Business Services. As a reminder, Ms. Omer is a certified public accountant who holds a Master's of Business Administration from Michigan State University and has been the Chief Financial Officer to Owasso Public Schools for the last 22 years. Mrs. Omer has served on the board of Michigan School of Business Officials, MSBO, and has worked diligently to maintain the financial health of Owasso Public Schools while supporting the growth of colleagues and professionals across the state of Michigan. Pending approval, Ms. Omer will officially begin her post in Walled Lake on December 4th, 2023. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Russo. I want to start my commentary with a rousing, I said it earlier, but I want to say it once again, go band. They compete on Saturday. I also want to highlight the Walled Lake Northern students who are performing Our Town this weekend, so best of luck to them. I am really thrilled about our two new additions that we're recommending on the consent agenda, but I'm going to take a different tact. As it stands right now, there's a very large gap in the marketplace for people who want to be special education administrators. And there's also a wide gap in what we call the Assistant Superintendent for Business Chief Financial Officer model. When we began our search, there were 37 vacancies for this position across the state. There were 6 vacancies in Metro Detroit, all in very respected districts. And so for us to have attracted and brought in 2 extraordinary candidates like we have is a credit to not only our HR team and their ability to post and recruit and run a good hiring process, but it's also a credit to the reputation that we carry. And so I think that it speaks volumes that these extraordinary candidates would consider Walled Lake in a time when, quite literally, these 2 individuals with their skill set could really work anywhere in Metro Detroit in K-12 education. So I compliment the HR team, I compliment the district for maintaining our reputation, and I welcome them to the team. I'm so excited about them. And then last but certainly not least, last month I mentioned a group of young ladies from Walled Lake Western who were everything we would want our students to be. I want to highlight 2 different groups. As an elementary parent, I know how much it means to me when someone tells me my children were polite. And so just 2 days ago on Halloween, we hosted the students from Walled Lake Elementary. They came across the street to show us their costumes and to go trick-or-treating through our building. They could not have been better. They said thank you. They said trick-or-treat. They smiled. They interacted with us. And I think made the day of the employees that work in this building. And so they are everything we hope our kids are. And then just a couple weeks ago, I had the opportunity to catch Walled Lake Northern play against Rochester High School in football. Walled Lake Northern's had a little bit of a bumpy season, to say the least. But to watch a group of young men who have not had a successful season, and to watch the way that they competed, to watch the way they, when someone got hurt, they would help them up. Just to watch the way they conducted themselves was everything we hope for from our students. And so I wanted to highlight those 2 groups and compliment them for representing us and our school district so well.
Thank you. And we go on to board commentary. Anything, Mrs. Kaplan?
Well, everyone stole my thunder with regards to band. I was going to promote the band competition Saturday at Ford Field. Our Walled Lake Band, which is a composition of Walled Lake Western and Walled Lake Central, will be performing on Ford Field, and they're second right now in standings, and we're going against Rockford, who's number 1. So keep fingers crossed and go band, and let's beat Rockford. I was also going to talk about Our Town, which is this weekend at Walled Lake Northern. I encourage you all to come and see a performance of our students. The following weekend, the 16th, 17th, is Wizard of Oz over at Western. Again, I encourage you all to come out and see what our students do. They're amazing. Whether it's band, whether it's the sports programs, our students are amazing. And please get involved and come see what everyone is doing. Thank you.
Mrs. Levin, anything tonight?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Casgrande. I asked Stephanie if I could steal this thunder. So, Leah, Lakes Area Youth Assistance, has a couple different programs that they do throughout the holiday season. One is the Adopt a Family program. Applications for that are due tomorrow. So if you are a family or know of a family who could use some support with gifts and things like that this year, please look to Leah to try to help with that. They're also doing the Shop with a Cop program. Applications for that are due on the 17th of November. So some great programs right here at home that can help families in need this holiday season. Some other shouts out. The Walled Lake Northern cross country and volleyball, girls volleyball teams have been doing outstanding at the conference and district levels, so great job there. And then over the last couple days, I'll bring the mood down for a second. I spent a lot of time reading the security report that came out of Oxford, 562 very depressing pages of information. And I shared it with our board and with Dr. Bernia, and hope that everybody will look through it and kind of make some highlights like I did, and be able to have discussions, maybe they're in closed session discussions, but about some security things that were brought to light in Oxford, because at the end of the day, nothing is more important than the safety of our kids, and I think a lot was learned from that report, and I encourage you to read it and take away from it whatever you want to, but it's a good place to start with questions and to hold us accountable for things that we're doing, but also hug your kids and hold them a little tighter too. Thank you.
Mr. Peterson, anything tonight?
Yep, one quick one. Last Thursday night, I attended Dr. Bernia's community forum at West Acres, and a pretty good turnout and a great range of questions that kept him busy for a good hour plus. I've done several of these, and it's always encouraging to see the people come out. I would kind of push on all of you that when those opportunities are out there, it's a great chance to voice concerns or look at issues that maybe you do not see or sometimes are hidden. So not just here in a board commentary or in one of our meetings, but that's a great forum opportunity. Please take advantage of them. I'm a great supporter of that and that outreach to the community. So thank you.
Anything tonight, Ms. Tice?
Yeah, I mean, I would just echo the same shout out to the band and just all our athletes who have been working really hard, whether their season turned out the way they had hoped or not. And then I know last year, this is just a busy time of year, right, with the plays and the concerts. And last year I got to go to one of the collage concerts for the first time. That was amazing. So coming up again in December. If you haven't been to one, I encourage you to go. It was really phenomenal. But yeah, the plays coming up, Walled Lake always does a great job. So yeah, looking forward to how they do with all that.
Mr. Siegler, anything tonight?
Yeah, I'd just like to thank our high school administrators, Dr. Bernia, Cabinet, with these turbulent times that we are addressing right now throughout our society and overseas. They have been very proactive. They have been on top of any situation. They have communicated very openly with the students, and the students in kind have, I think, received this as a wonderful message and a wonderful opportunity. We have other districts in Oakland County that are having issues, but I think hopefully we have everything under control here, and that the communication lines stay as open as they are. And also, we have a great team in this district, and you have to look at other districts throughout Oakland County and the state to really appreciate what we have here, because they're not as fortunate as we are. So thank you.
Anything, Mrs. Fernandez?
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Casagrande. I just wanted to let folks know that Mrs. Casagrande appointed a board policy committee 2 meetings ago, and myself and Mr. Peterson and Ms. Kaplan have been diligently getting together regularly, and you'll hear a first reading of some of our policies, and we meet again next week. So more to come. I think we've started to get a good groove together, and we look forward to doing our best to keep moving through what is a mountain of policy.
Thank you. I appreciate that, and I appreciate all the work. I know how much work that is. I wasn't going to say anything tonight, but when we had a couple of comments from Cabinet up here about Western, I just thought I'd share a little something. My husband and I were taking a bike ride. We were going to plant some trees over at Gunamatala Park with an organization, and we were biking behind a couple of former students from Walled Lake Western. We were close enough to them. We heard them as they went by. Oh my gosh, what is that? Is that a new, Western? And so I told them it's a new wing. And my husband couldn't believe I started a conversation on a bike, but I did. And they wanted to know when it was going to open. So I told them, when it was opening, next fall. And they were just really impressed. So we had some former students from Western taking a bike ride by, and they were really impressed with how it looked. And I thought I'd mention that to you. With that being said, we'll move on to the consent agenda. We have the approval of minutes proposed from October 5th, a regular meeting, and from October 19th, a special meeting in closed session. We also have personnel recommendations, some of what has been brought forward here by Mr. Russo, administrative appointments, new hires, resignations, retirements, and a leave of absence. We also have financial reports. We have disbursements. Initially, in our first amount is $22,837,001. That's for August, and then for September, we had disbursements of $22,403,232. We also have purchases under $50,000. We have consortium fees, one consortium fees, district-wide Oakland Schools Network Maintenance and Support Annual Renewal. That is for $36,948.54. That's coming from the general fund. We also have a Head Start Director's Report. Mrs. Kaplan.
I move that the Board of Education approve the consent agenda as presented.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Next, we have the proclamation of National Education Week. Dr. Bernia.
Thank you, Madam President. The proclamation for National Education Week reads, whereas public education is the backbone of our democracy, providing young people with the tools they need to maintain our nation's precious values of freedom, civility, and equality, and whereas by equipping young Americans with both practical skills and broader intellectual abilities, schools give them hope for and access to a productive future, and whereas public education employees, be they educators, substitute educators, administrators, custodians, bus drivers, secretarial, paraeducators, food service professionals, skilled trade workers, or technical employees, work tirelessly to serve our children and communities with care and professionalism, and whereas public schools are the foundations of neighborhoods and communities, bringing together adults and children, educators and volunteers, business leaders and elected officials in a common purpose. Therefore, be it resolved that the members of the Walled Lake Schools Board of Education and Administration proclaim November 13th through 17th, 2023 as the observance of National Education Week.
Thank you. And our next agenda item is purchases over $50,000. Dr. Bernia.
We're going to go to Mr. Chatfield.
Thank you, Dr. Bernia. Walled Lake Schools was fortunate to receive a grant from the Michigan Department of Education to complete critical incident mapping of all of our district facilities. Administration recommends awarding this service to Virtual Technology Simplified, VTS, in the amount of $51,000. VTS out of Brighton has demonstrated they have the technology and experience to complete this mapping in accordance with the very strict state guidelines. Critical incident mapping is a best practice for the safety of schools, which is recommended by MDE, that will create comprehensive but easy to follow floor plans to assist first responders in responding to emergencies at our facilities. This project will be funded through the 97D Safety and Security Grant awarded by the state of Michigan.
Ms. Tice.
I move that the Board of Education approve the recommendation to hire Virtual Technology Simplified to complete critical incident mapping services of all district facilities in the amount of $51,000 and in accordance with the MDE Section 97D grant requirements as presented.
Any discussion? Mr. Peterson?
Just one question. Is this a one-time mapping requirement, or is this annually or reoccurring?
Yeah, it's intended to be a one-time mapping. The funding is a one-time funding source through the grant from the state of Michigan. Obviously, if we make changes, any appreciable changes to our facilities, we will have to go through a process of updating these for our first responders in the future.
Any other comments? I applaud you for looking at this. My day job is in this area, and I know how important it is when you have an incident and understanding what the floor plan is and building those relationships with first responders. All right, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Next item, Dr. Bernia.
Right back to Mr. Chatfield.
Thank you, Dr. Bernia. Administration recommends the purchase of new digital cafeteria menu boards from Toshiba through the MAC Consortium in the amount of $78,733.56. These menu boards will be strategically placed and installed at the middle and high schools to enable students to see what's on the menu before they get to the point of service. The key there is that it will help to speed up the line by giving students advanced information about what they might want to purchase, and which increases the amount of time that students have to eat their meals. And it's something that we've wanted to do for a long time, but we now have an opportunity due to some reserves in the food service fund, which is where this purchase will be funded from.
Mr. Siegler?
I move that the Board of Education approve the purchase of cafeteria menu boards from Toshiba through the MAC Purchasing Cooperative for $78,733.56 from the Food Service Fund.
Any discussion? Mrs. Fernandez?
I have a question, more point of curiosity. Are these funds that are available to, for the purchase of these menu boards, can they be used for other purposes, including staffing, or are they restricted in some way?
They're restricted for eligible food service funds. They could be used for staffing potentially, but they are also certainly eligible for these capital project purchases.
Okay. Any other questions? Mrs. Levin?
So that's an interesting point, I guess. If there's been discussion, at least in public comment, about a lack of staffing in cafeterias, I wonder if there's not a better use for the money to give bonuses to lunch paras, or more staffing could also help lines move faster. I don't know if this is the best use of the funds. I hadn't thought of that, but thank you for that question.
Any other comments? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 5-2.
I apologize. Could you tell me who the nays were? I know it was.
The nays are Mrs. Levin and Mrs. Fernandez.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Authorization of easement for sanitary sewer Hickory Woods Elementary, City of Novi. Dr. Bernia?
We're going to go back to Mr. Chatfield.
Thank you, Dr. Bernia. While reviewing utility services for a new residential development near Hickory Woods Elementary, it was found that a sanitary sewer easement was never created for a City of Novi sanitary sewer main that has been in place on district property for many years. As is customary to enable municipalities to maintain and service utilities that reside on district property, the City of Novi is requesting approval of a sanitary sewer easement. Administration has reviewed these documents. Actually, we had our legal counsel prepare these documents, and we do recommend approval to correct this decade-long oversight.
Mr. Siegler.
I move that the Board of Education approve the sanitary sewer easement with the City of Novi and authorize the superintendent to execute the easement documents.
Any discussion? All right, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Authorization of easement for water and sewer Hickory Woods Elementary neighbor. Dr. Bernier.
Once more, we're going to go to Mr. Chatfield.
All right, last one, I promise. The owner of the property south of Hickory Woods Elementary, Ayad Kashat, is building a home that requires an easement from Walled Lake Consolidated Schools to run their water and sewer lines across district property to connect into the City of Novi service mains for water and sewer. Mr. Kashat has agreed to reimburse the district for the legal and documentation preparation costs. Administration has reviewed the documents with our legal counsel, and we recommend approval.
Mrs. Levin.
I move that the Board of Education approve the water and sewer main easement with Ayad Kashat, subject to reimbursement of legal and document preparation fees, and authorize the superintendent to execute the easement documents.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Board policy review. Dr. Bernier.
Yes, thank you. So in your packet tonight is policies for the first reading. So tonight is the first reading, and then we will come back to you at our regular meeting on December 7th to recommend the board approve these policy updates. This gives board members sufficient time to review them, ask any questions they might have, propose any edits, etc. I want to compliment our policy subcommittee. They've met several times, and those meetings have, I think each and every one of them has gone overtime. And so I do appreciate their hard work, and unless a member of the committee has anything further, that's it for this update.
Anything anybody want to talk about today? Okay, thank you. I just appreciate the work as well, and ask that if there are any questions, bring them to Dr. Bernier. He'll get them back to all of us, and then we will have it on our agenda in December. Thank you. Our next to last before we adjourn is the Oakland County School Board Association dinner meeting, and so I have Mrs. Casagrande, Fernandez, Kaplan, Levin, Siegler. Anybody else going? Okay. I move the Board of Education approve the attendance of Mrs. Casagrande, Mrs. Fernandez, Mrs. Kaplan, Mrs. Levin, Mr. Siegler at the Oakland County School Board Association dinner meeting on Wednesday, December 6th, 2023, and authorize payment of the registration fee. Any discussion? Just for the public's understanding, this is a joint meeting of the county and the superintendents, and so I appreciate that we have so many people who are going. We do that joint meeting usually about once a year, and I look forward to that. So all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 7-0, and we are adjourned at 8:51, a new recent record. Have a good evening.